Uh, Good morning. This is the Richard Thomas Writing Channel, episode 9. And I'd like to start today. This is something that I wrote to my friend. I thought it was pretty good, and it's kind of where things are at right now. Thinking about 3 examples. Oscar Wilde said, "If you define yourself as one thing, your punishment is that you will be that one thing. If you never know, you can be anything." In the past several years, I've defined myself as a quote writer, or more broadly, as a quote artist. As noble and wonderful as those things are in their highest forms, they are too limiting. I feel my life opening up. I've had this nagging longing for new experiences for a while now. We just create by following our deepest desires. All other classifications are unnecessary. I see in my own life that nothing was ever prescribed or permanent. It has always been a surprise. Warren Buffett's deceased good friend and business partner, Charlie Munger, said that the purpose of being rich was not having to do anything with other people. He could make his investments without any interference from other business people who had their own agendas. Autonomy can be achieved with less than $1 billion or with little money at all. The question is so intriguing. How do you relate to life when you don't need anyone else to do what you want? Some of my ideation of past slights has had to do with injustice. They've turned into empathy for others. I know a guy who went to a business meeting and he was told by another attendee that the only reason why he was there was because he worked there. This guy was an accomplished artist, and some family situation forced him to give up both that dream and satisfaction he had out of making his art. And he has struggled working in business ever since. The condescension of the asshole at the meeting was hurtful and harmful. And I can really have empathy for what he was going through. But so that's a good thing about that kind of abuse, those toxic interactions and relationships that we all, not unfortunately, I mean, that we all go through. But another part of my negative ideation of past depressions and slights had to do with not fully embracing my autonomy. I don't need any of the people that hated me. I don't think it's too strong of a word. I don't need them. And I haven't for quite a while. Yet, sometimes I would still think about them. Now, I had to fight through them in the past to have my life, and I'm very proud that I did. But what do I do now that the revolution is over and I have won? Václav Havel wrote about the difference between being a revolutionary in then Czechoslovakia and president of the Czech Republic. Different types of creativity. These are different types of creativity, being a revolutionary or being a president. An era of courage and struggle gives way to a time of joy and freedom. I believe Kamala Harris is trying to do this deep thing for our country. We aren't going back. We won, and we are not going to pull down into the toxic domination of unserious and lesser people. I ordered a hat, one of those camouflage hats, Harris Waltz, and I eagerly anticipated. I would like to wear it occasionally on these videos and elsewhere. That's just a digression. JD Vance had an awful childhood in a mean and violent place. Unlike Martin Scorsese, who charted a course from mean streets to a passion for film, Vance looked at his past not with art, but with hatred. His mama, the grandmother who raised him, told him to get the fuck out of the hills. He had one chip to play to ante into the game. He was good in school. So he joined the Marines and he went to Ohio State afterwards on the GI Bill. Took out massive student loans to go to Yale Law School. As with all of these people that I write about, particularly famous people, it's not insight. There might be a little bit of noticing or something. They're not researched. I'm not a historian. These are works of imagination. I'm imagining J.D. Vance, okay? But that's the degree of my interest in him. So it's like, so he anteed his one chip. He had education. He was good in school. He was good at education. He didn't have it yet. So he joined the Marines to get the GI Bill. He went to Ohio State, and then he took out massive student loans to go to Yale Law School. And he found a teacher who encouraged him to write a memoir. He wrote about how much he hated the people he grew up with. The royalties paid off Yale and set him up. He went to work for venture capitalists who consumed his old friends and neighbors, said sarcastically, like Soylent Green. Soylent Green, for those who aren't aware of it, was a movie. I don't know if it was based on a book about the remains of people being turned into food to feed the rest of the people to deal with starvation on Earth. It was this science fiction dystopia. So the illusion here is that the venture capitalists eat the poor people from Appalachia. He rose, or further descended, more accurately, to a vice presidential nomination at the age of 39. Vance is an extreme example, but his story teaches me why I abandoned my memoir. It was written while unnecessarily needing other people, the small presses, the agents, the good friend in another life who was a publisher and author of a small press. The need warped my story. As you know, J.D. Vance is quite warped, a lot more warped than I am. And his story was warped by his need. Right. Mama said, get the fuck out of the hills with this white trash and go with the rich people where you belong and fuck everybody and make a good life for yourself. It's a beautiful story with a disgusting ending. This isn't to say, back to what I wrote, which is more elegant than my spoken asides. This isn't to say that there wasn't much good in my manuscripts. There was a lot of good. I'm not going to toss them away. But what was good was not fully conscious, not as aware as I am right now. So the story isn't what I thought it was. So the past changes, which is one reason, really the primary driver of these videos. I mean, my friend tells me, "Oh, it's good that you explain it in such a way that someone who's new to it or a young person could really understand it." Really, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure it out for myself. So I simplify it for myself. So really what I'm doing is that I'm reviewing my writing in a way. It's what is, it's what I want to do right now, but it also is some sort of preparation for I don't know what. Okay. Thank you, Oscar Wilde, for putting that into words. I think I said something similar when I said I don't know what I'm doing and I'm very good at it. I said that on a previous video, and that's kind of the same idea. For me, joy and freedom are more than a campaign slogan. They are my mantra. What will my life look like now that I am fully aware that I am joyful and free? I don't need these people, which doesn't mean that I don't want to engage with people. It's the opposite, but I don't engage with people with any sort of need. Uh, I'm not performing for anybody. I'm not pretending for anybody, and I'm not trying to persuade anybody. I'm just trying to connect in the most authentic way possible. Okay, and that authenticity doesn't mean, you know, they said, "Oh, Ronald Reagan, he's so comfortable in his own skin." He really knows himself, and it gives him a lot of confidence. The problem with that type comfort is that he was like a statue. I mean, he had very rigid ideas, uh, and maybe this isn't completely fair to Reagan, but at least in my imagination, it's certainly fair about some things where he would cut money for the homeless and then he'd send a check to some lady, a personal check to some lady that she was having financial problems. He'd send her $500 or something. To me, he was. You get stuck. We're not nouns, we're verbs. And that's what Oscar Wilde has said, and that's what I've been saying. So who knows how it plays itself out. I'm saying we because I'm saying something that I believe about mankind. I don't believe in giving advice or telling you how to live your life. I mean, if I can help, it's by talking about how I live my life. But I live my life with a belief that we surf towards our destiny. We don't, so this thing about defining or, I remember once I had an awful job as a telemarketer, and they had the blackboard in front of the room, and it said, the day's goals. I remember I had a visceral reaction against that word goals. I did I don't want goals. I mean, you have to adapt. And one of the things is somebody said, "Well, you said you were going to do this or this." Well, things change. Everything changes. We change internally, and the circumstances change on the outside. So I think you don't have it together at all if you never change. It Well, I'm taking off with this. Okay. Uh, for example, the whole idea of belief, because sometimes I'll talk about divinity or I'll use the word God and they say, "Oh, you believe in God or whatever," and that's like, it's very uncool in certain sectors. I don't believe in God. I experience some sort of creative intelligence that informs everything. I don't I don't invent myself. I don't make choices. I figure out and discover what the truth of who I am is. So I say here, what will my life look like now that I'm fully aware that I am joyful and free? What will I create not partially out of need, but animated by something else. Another thing that my friend and I have been talking about is the basically he brought it up, the fragility of life. He has a close friend who they lost their son, quite suddenly, and you know we each shared examples of how it ends right away. The only thing I would pull out of that discussion to use here is the fact that first the trite thing. I'm I'm happier, not that that's always the point of life, but I'm happier at this point in my life than I ever have been before. And I'm fortunate to have this happiness at this point in my life because I have gratitude for it. Because I know that eventually it will end. I will die, people I love will die, things I love to do, I'm going to lose the facility to be able to do them. Um, that's just the way it is. And there's these constant reminders, if you pay attention to them, of how we're in danger all the time. But what that brings is a certain humility too, because the individual ends, the individual gets diminished by old age and illness or whatever, poverty, whatever bad things happen. The individual ends or is diminished, but the beat goes on. The beat continues, which is another thing I believe about what it is that we're supposed to be doing and who we are. We exist as individuals, but it's all a participation in this greater thing that's beyond our individual uh, ego. So, how do we create and uh, another point about that is that I found that some of the what I would call the best things that I've ever done were um, unconscious. So, you know, the purpose-driven life, that's the thing, the purpose-driven life. We have to have some sort of purpose. We have to have some sort of idea. I think the purpose of life is life. So if you fully live it as honestly as you can, because you can be in denial of your life. You can just have ideas that take you away from your what your life is. If we fully live it, uh, we will end up serving ourselves and not only everybody else, but just all time. When I used to teach improv classes, I used to say, here's the formula for an improvised scene: X people in Y space at Z time equals one. In other words, the perfect improvised scene doesn't have to do with yes and or being clever or having good ideas or anything else. It has to do if if something were, I don't know if this is completely theoretical. I don't even know if there's ever been an improvisation done that's like this. But there's really only one outcome that could happen if everything is authentic and conscious and aware and present. If you're completely present in that one moment, there's only one scene that could possibly happen if everybody is at the fullness of that. Now somebody could say, well, there's parallel universes and there's all these levels of, of what actual reality is, but that would be in the scene. So the idea for the individual in life is that the main thing is to participate in life, to participate in it. There's so anyway, I'll leave it. I'll leave it at that. Okay, let's start looking at the writing. All right, the next piece I'm looking at, I wrote on August the 22nd, 2023. Maybe, who knows, maybe this ties into what I was just talking about now. This is my stream of consciousness viewing The Birdman of Alcatraz, movie from 1962. Escape from prison, brave life in the face of death. Let's see if this writing is notes, if it's worth anything, if it says anything about the future, everything we're looking at. Who knows? My Uncle Nello died pretty much alone. Emphysema. Everyone was in Chicago. He was in Rochester. I don't think it was horrible. He was an introverted guy, never married, few friends. But I think he was in a nice place and the staff was kind to him. He had friends there. He had comfort and peace. That line, he had friends there. So there's a note I would make to myself. As writing, it's not a great line. As a spoken word piece, it's okay. I mean, the way that I said it gave the meaning of the line. And that's something that I just, is this stuff talk? Is it writing? Is it sometimes, I don't know. Or these are, but I'm putting that out there as a question about what I'm doing. Rewatched Birdman of Alcatraz. What a hero. Imprisoned and aging, one foot after another, he grew as a person and created. He did it not for success. He was barred from success. He did it to be fully human. He ended up doing a lot for a lot of people, but he did it for his own existential well-being. Now, this is pretty amazing to me because this is coherent and consistent with how I open this video. And I purposely said, I'm going to do this video where I'm going to read that letter that I sent to my friend, and then I was going to just go into the manuscript. So I didn't even review this at all. And this seems to be, there seems to be a thematic connection with what I just said with what's in this piece on the Birdman of Alcatraz. And I think that's very interesting. I don't know if the story of the film is entirely true, but it ought to be. Burt Lancaster was inspired in the role. A Portrait of Humanity. Robert Stroud, Lancaster, starts out mad at the world. He's smarter and better than everyone around him, inmates, wardens, guards. Stroud believes his mother is the only person who loves him. Is all genius born mother bound? She ultimately betrays him, which was his good fortune. I mean, as I'm writing this, one of the things that I thought of is like I had these conversations with my friend and with my wife. It's like, are the manuscripts better than the essays in the blood? I don't really think this is an essay. This isn't about the Birdman of Alcatraz. It's about me looking at the Birdman of Alcatraz and seeing me in it, which is very common in a lot of my writing. I look at the world and I see myself in the world, which is not delusional and it's not narcissistic. I think it's reality. A model of an atom looks like a model of a solar system. The our external the moments of greatest harmony and happiness are when external reality is congruent with internal reality, which I which is kind of where I live. Um, so 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 this I don't know. I used to put and I was criticized for this. I used to put I did it kind of for a reason of distribution. If I put an essay on the blog, for years I put hashtag poetry. And the reason why I did it is because I shared the essays on Twitter as well as other social media, and I knew that some poets would read it. So I figured the hashtag poetry would, get it in front of people who are interested in poetry. But the fact is, I think there is something poetic about this in a very indirect and not obvious way. I mean, I've used this story many times. I this this was like something that made a huge impression on me. I went to the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and they had a Picasso exhibit. And in a rectangular room, they had a series of portraits that he made of his mistress, Dora Maar. And in the beginning, I mean, they were Cubist paintings, so they were abstract or whatever. But in the beginning, he's flattering to her, and it's like there's a romantic attraction, maybe love for her. I don't know. There's a deep positive feeling in the paintings. But as it goes on, you can see that he evolves into a real hatred of her until the end. She's like some kind of a gargoyle or whatever, and apparently he was horrible to her. Even stories like he put cigarettes out on her arms or something. I mean really like awful. But the weird levels of those paintings always stood for me. Those paintings were really paintings of Picasso. They were paintings of what he saw in the world. And I would argue with absolutely, again, there's no scholarship in this. I'm not a Picasso biographer. I have no idea. I think they were paintings of himself, because I think what we see I see myself in the world. The world is a mirror. And the whole idea of atonement, at one-ment. I think this merger with the world which eventually, it's where we're definitely heading. I mean, we're heading that way from when we're born, and when we die, that's exactly what happens. We're this puddle, that's this little tiny puddle that's subsumed by a rushing river, and there's no definition to the puddle anymore. It's just a little speck of water in this river that goes forward. So I'm being very kind of metaphysical this morning, and maybe there's all the more power to it because I don't know what I'm talking about. It's not like I've been reading Nietzsche all night or something, or somebody. So anyway, uh, so far I really like this piece, and I like this piece on a level that I don't think anybody reading it, with no criticism of the people reading it at all, I don't think anybody reading it could really know this. But I see the whole thing. Mother-bound soul. My mother didn't betray me like in the Birdman of Alcatraz, but I had a mother-bound soul, and mad at the world. I had years being mad at the world, and and being sort of fixated on feeling that I was smarter and better than everyone around me, which by the way, I was. I'm not, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that with any shame. I mean, or not a lot of pride either, because you know, right now in the polls, Trump has like 47% of the vote. I mean, what the fuck are those people thinking? And if they're the people that are sitting around you, which in my case, I think a lot of them were, then come on. And then you factor in, the people. There, there are assholes that are going to vote for Kamala Harris too. I mean, not that she's in it. I think she's wonderful, really. But so add in more. I mean, there's a lot of people that have no clue. There's a lot of people that wouldn't think about. I'm not saying I'm right about them, or I'm not even making a claim that this is a good rendition of what I'm trying to talk about. But there's a lot of people that never consider this aspect of life at all. They eat, they take a shit, they try to get something that boosts their ego. They want to belong somewhere. They want to have something to feel like they're important. If they don't feel like they're important, they want to identify with some asshole like Trump or some. It's like most people, they don't even bother to live at all. Uh, so yeah. Uh, my father would tell me, "Oh, you shouldn't be angry at the world." Well, yes and no. I mean, yeah, the need brought a personal aspect to the anger, but I think I think a lot of the ways that people act deserves a righteous indignation. So I don't think the Birdman of Alcatraz was wrong to think he was smarter and better than most everyone around him. He was. And first, that led him into jail. It led him to punishment. Because there's one thing that, the townspeople always want to get their torches and go after Frankenstein or put Christ on the cross. There's nothing that is more ripe for punishment than excellence. And part of it is it's hard to learn how to deal with excellence. But then later, when he gained peace, he showed, not that he showed, it didn't, he showed it to me. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he showed. He just was smarter than better than the others without conflict. And the people who were looking for smarter and better loved him for it because he helped them get smarter and better. And if you want to talk about service, the Joseph Campbell, who influenced me, of course I mentioned him many times, but he said, if you really want to help the world, follow your highest enthusiasm. And I agree with that. That's what Robert Stroud did. But I'm getting ahead of the story. Okay. Stroud makes peace with the idiots and assholes of the world. His anger subsides and is replaced by wisdom. He frees him. I don't know. I could be saying Rick, but anyway, he frees himself from his codependence with his mother. Okay, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Need, codependency, need. These two transformations freed him to work to the potential of his genius, regardless of environment and circumstances, and open himself to true interdependent love with wife and friend. Sounds familiar to me. Stroud's love of work and significant others unleashed an agape love, a sagacious empathy for the whole world. And that's really interesting too, because my friend was telling me he was like cataloging what he thought I was interested in by reading the letter. We talk to each other about what we see in each other. And one of the things that he said was is that I was interested in a justice for all people so that they had a chance to really live to the fullness of their human potentials. And Kamala Harris talks about that. She talks about an opportunity economy, and that's 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 exactly right. The people have a chance to work and love with autonomy and with dignity. Um, so I have the agape love of the Birdman of Alcatraz. Stroud was a murderer who became a spiritual leader. I don't think I ever was a murderer. You know, I think I was antisocial, but I never hurt anybody in that way. As a matter of fact, later in this piece, as I recall, I talk about the one thing in my memory that I feel regret for. There's one thing that I feel bad about. I mean, other than that, I don't feel bad. I told a lot of people to fuck off. I had all sorts of arguments with people. I stormed out of things. I was unpleasant. Um, but I don't think I was mean, and I don't think I ever really hurt anybody. I think I think most of the abuse came in my direction. But there's a difference. There's a difference between being antisocial and and being criminal. Okay, and maybe in some strange way, this makes Stroud even greater than me. Not that I'm making a comparison about greatness. I mean, we're talking about excellence because he 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 went from being a person who wanted to kill people, um, and he reacted with he reacted with an unjustified action to justifiable anger. I think that was the circumstance of the murder he was involved with. Uh, but so he may be a higher level of saint than I am. And it sounds like saint. You're calling yourself a saint. Well, I'm not saying that with any pride, but I'm not bragging about it or being ridiculously delusional about it. It sounds that way, but yeah, I'm kind of I don't think holy or always perfect or anything, but I live a lot more easily in eternity than I do in chronological time. Uh, which also ties into what I was reading before. Um, anyway, let me continue. Stroud was a murderer who became a spiritual leader. He inspired millions with his intellect and character, and yet all of that influence arose from his independence. More than any character that presently comes to my mind, Stroud embodies self reliance. And that illustrates the point talking about Charlie Munger saying he wanted to be a billionaire, so he didn't need anybody to do what he was doing. He didn't need anybody. and neither did Stroud. And Stroud didn't have a dime. He was in jail. He didn't need it. He did all of this out of a prison cell with sparrows and matchsticks and working out of a library that had books that had pages missing and everything. He had a uh, and being alone a lot of the time, and yet he had an impact on the world. Now, again, don't misunderstand me. This has nothing to do with fame. I don't think there's ever going to be a movie version of the Richard Thomas Writing Channel. I may be known by very, it has nothing to do with famous or success. It's all, but it has to do ultimately with one's relation to the world. Revolution starts and ends when a parent is a parent. What is that, Freudian? When a person is alone in his room. The luckiest break a genius can receive is to be forgotten by the world. Stroud had a third grade education, and with the gift of time and forced seeming idleness, he became a world authority on avian studies and eventually a great intellectual on many topics, a dazzling generalist. And that's really interesting because one of the things that society told me far after I was hospitalized in my 30s, but I was told because I was different, go off by yourself, go in your room. And that gave me a great life. That was a great life because then the people that did come into my life were really, really beautiful and wonderful people, and the ones that hectored me for not conforming to really their stupid bullshit receded. So that's interesting. I really like this piece, by the way. This is a good piece of writing. So now we have two pieces of writing that are really good because the last one that I read was really good, and I like this piece. And I'm seeing more this aspect of these blog essays. These blog essays, because the whole question was, is it as good as a novel? Does it have this is a narrative. This is a story. This was a way that I told my story in this indirect way. I think it's artistically, I think it's actually more interesting than writing a novelized narrative. That was one of the things that I felt when I did those manuscripts. It's like a lot of it was like, why am I bothering with all this bullshit? I mean, they're sort of like formal requirements and things that you have to do, and it seemed to be an unnecessary amount of labor. And instead of just living my life and reporting my inner reality and my perception of reality every day, I didn't see what the manuscripts were doing for me. Of course, what I was told by really smart people that know about writing said, well, you're going deeper in those manuscripts because it involves time and you have a long, long narrative. But I really don't think that I was going deeper. I don't think there's anything in the manuscripts that is deep about what we're talking about now or what's on this video combined with this writing from the past. I mean, when I started, I said it's just writing. I didn't want to define it as and I'm glad. I I don't know. I don't know where this is going, and I'm not worried about it. I just know that if I it, I don't need those conventions. Okay, this is a story that I'm reading. This is part of a story. There's a lot of this writing that's part of a very long story that I've been doing now for 12 years because it goes beyond when I had the blog. And just because it's not in chronological order, or just because I'm not directly talking about my experiences, even though I do directly talk about my experiences when I feel like it, and that counts too. But that's the story. So I don't see the need I just don't see the need for that form. Another argument was as well, if you do it that way, then you mix too much together and then nothing ends up meaning anything. I don't think that's true. You read a personal essay on the blog, you read a memory anecdote in the manuscript, you're you're getting it all bite size anyway. I don't have to provide, like, you provide how you separate it, how much you're going to listen to, when you're going to go back to it, when you're going to speed ahead. I don't I just it's not the way I experience life. I don't experience life like reading a novel. I experience life like streaming. I stream life. It's it's all this stuff all over the place. And I think that's the way life is. I'm here doing this video now, then I'm going to have lunch with my wife, then I might go to the store, then I might things come up, the kids might come up, whatever, just ordinary stuff or whatever, and it doesn't mean that I'm living life without depth. And the whole idea that the passage of time, that's the thing in a novel that gives it depth. It's also the thing in life that gives it depth. So really, that's nothing that I have to try to recreate. I mean, I have more understanding of this piece that I'm reading right now. It's the reason why I'm doing it than I did when I wrote it like over a year ago. That the Because of time. It's like I'm thinking and deepening all the time just by living. I don't have to try to approximate it in the way I structure some sort of novel. Um, anyway, that's what I'm thinking about right now. And if I do end up writing a novel, then this is going to inform it in some way in terms of the way that I write it. But to me, trying to fulfill the requirements of a form just feels like trying to fit in. And I don't need anybody to fit in with. I mean, I just want to be with the people who want to be with me, and I want to protect myself from the people that would do me harm. And I just want to do not what I feel like doing from like that I make up in my mind for my ego or something, but I just want to do what I my deep impulse. I just want to live my deep impulse. I want to be alive. I want to be alive. I don't want to be. I don't know. All this success. This is the form of a novel. This is how you have to behave socially. This is what bullshit. I mean, who cares? The we're talking about the fragility of life. To participate in life, our participation is very, very brief. So all those things just seem to be like distractions that alienate us from really naturally living our lives. And I've thought this since maybe I was 9 years old. If everyone lived out their natural destiny, there wouldn't be a problem in the world. That everybody with their different talents and interests and personality, and if all that, if everyone could do that and it would be honored and respected by everyone else around them, I don't think there'd be I don't think there'd be any troubles whatsoever. So, so one thing that I'm trying to do is to fully be me. Okay. How many people have been shamed, punished, and rejected only to greatly improve and transform the world? All of them? Whoever did improve and transform the world? Lancaster himself, Burt Lancaster, the actor, had little formal education, but it is said that he read a book a day and he made so many great films. Stroud may be his finest role, the part most likely who he really was, the part most like who he really was, much more so than the lasciviously grinning Elmer Gantry, another great turn, that won him an Oscar. We are born to learn. That's all we are meant to do. Not born to teach, born to learn. I've never wanted to teach anybody anything. And if you're listening to me as a teacher, I think you're making a mistake. I just feel this drive to talk. I want to share what I learn. I want to talk, but I don't want to share it with everybody. If it's not for you, if it's not for a person, I really don't care. But I want to share it with people who want to hear it. That's what I like to do. That I don't have to know anything more about it than that. That's the feeling. And you see over time that you don't see all of it, but you see some of the positive benefit to existence, to life, to the universe, the positive benefit that's had. You know, so we're born to learn. That's all we were meant to do. Learn about ourselves, learn about the nature of things. All things we do happen naturally as a product of our learning. Stroud couldn't be motivated by any reward. He was denied all rewards. He was forced to live for process, and he learned that process is all that there is. Lancaster, the great action hero, the acrobat, the sex icon making love on a beach, gives a performance of such stillness. A man studying a sparrow. What an image of true action and real adventure. Movies aren't art mostly. They show people what they want to believe is true. In 1962, people wanted to believe in the greatness of Robert Stroud. I find that encouraging. So maybe I contradict myself that maybe I wasn't seeing the whole picture when I thought the people around me were so stupid and venal. The things are more complicated than that. Stroud learned how to defend himself without aggression. His journey involved going from murderer. Should I adjust this a little bit? Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. Stroud learned how to defend himself without aggression. His journey involved going from murderer to mensch. He stopped arguing and began asserting. He transcended injustice. No one could steal his dignity. His life changed the lives of those he knew more than any conscious reform ever could. I'm not going to keep just saying, oh, it was that way for me too. I mean, you get the point. But there's nothing in this piece that is not touched by my personal experience. Nothing. The Catholic Church says faith without works is dead. They've got it wrong. Works without faith is dead. There are plenty of people who have wings of hospitals named after them that burn in hell, if there is one. There are plenty of murderers who change and make the world a better place. You want to change yourself, change the world, change yourself. I would probably change that line a little bit and just say, you want to change the world? Allow yourself to change. Do you think you got a raw deal? Maybe you have, but you can live a great life in Alcatraz. The only prisons are in our minds. Narrator from the movie. Stroud developed a world in microcosm with his birds. This is our great potential. We can actually create a world. I hope AI frees mankind from work. Then all of us can concern ourselves with art and science instead of survival, and maybe we'll have peace. I've mentioned this AI freeing us from work like several times. Um, it, and basically, it's saying how soul denying much that we call work is. Stroud lived a life of abundance. A life sentence was also an endowment, a gift from the gods to allow him freedom to work on his natural interests. To take very little and do something fine is one of the most satisfying parts of being alive. The temptation is to say the Stroud character was a saint. That's too easy. He was a man. Well, I like what I said earlier better than that. A man can be a saint. Uh, Forget halos. It's a way of living life. My definition of a saint is that somebody who lives their life in a beyond social way, somebody who lives on a higher plane than society. That's a saint. Um, it's not being antisocial; it's being post-social. There's a higher way to engage the world than to be a social actor, even a positive social actor. There's higher ways to live. The temptation to say Stroud is what we should be, that's self defeating. He is what we could be, what we are if we commit to doing the work, the real work, not society's work, the real work. You have to be patient. Wait until the light goes on. Grace is a real thing. Once it does, you get started. Stroud was blessed by people who saw who he was, no longer the murderer of two men. The movie thinks I want to believe in redemption and wise and benevolent men and women. And it's right. We all need redemptions. We've all done horrible things. Here's what I think is the most horrible thing I ever did in my life. Remember my Uncle Nello? I hurt him badly. I was close to him when I was a boy. And when he was dying, he called my mother and asked if I could give him a call. As I said, he was alone and gravely ill. I was busy on trial. I was practicing law at the time. And I was immaturely resentful of things he had said. I don't even now remember what they were. I never called him. He died a couple days after he spoke to my mother. The cruelest thing I ever did. And I truly, truly regret it. And I'm very sorry, Nello. I don't think I don't think he exists anymore, but anyway, I'm deeply sorry about it. I eventually had so much remorse for what I did, it changed my life. My gravest sin was the impetus for a new life. I don't I don't ignore I don't ignore people's sadness and fear. I don't ignore it anymore. We sin and descend into the ugly precincts of the world, jails and prisons of one kind or another. We have a chance to be liberated while in our cells. Stroud lost all bitterness in his tiny, austere room with a small barred window. He gained a broader view of the world. His anger turned into a kind of grounded sorrow. He still told the truth and still defended himself, but without rancor. He knew the consciousness of mankind is currently divided. They're doing yard work outside. Just ignore that. All enlightenment and love, all ignorance and hate, and every compromise in between is found in the collective hearts and minds of men and women. We are all sentenced to a bittersweet life. Age and solitude gives us this wisdom. These old actors, now long gone, are so good. How they connect their story to the unspoken dimensions of the lives of all persons. Existentialism and popcorn. Stroud's every setback, each cruel act against him, is defied and defeated in his very person. The holy fool strides forward, but nothing but a small knapsack and his wits and heart. He learns the final lesson. Even death is nothing to fear. He followed his dissatisfaction to true greatness. When I died, I am certain he was satisfied, if the story is true. And if it isn't, it should be. Now, one thing I would say, I've been talking and reading here for a little over an hour. And this is one thing that I could see as somewhere where this work could possibly go. I see this on a stage. I see this tape, for example, being edited a bit, tightened up, and polished. And I see me going out on stage and doing these two readings that I did today and talking in between the readings. And whether anybody would sit still for that or not, all the different problems of formally what anybody produce it with the, but that's what I could see. And in the meantime, there's this video, but I see this as a spoken word theater piece, and I think I just did that today. So, that anyway, that's one thing I could imagine doing going forward. Okay, well, that's it for today, and we'll see you next time.